What does it mean to live life to the fullest, train to your potential, and perform at your best?
Leave nothing on the table. That's a non-negotiable, is that I strive to be better every day. Because if I'm not on top of my game, how is anybody else going to follow me down the road?
Keep demanding more of yourself to live up to that potential and to stay hungry.
Training is progress. You know, when I look at the word training, I think of steps, baby steps to get somewhere that you want to be. And that is basically your life journey.
It's a mindset in itself, man. It's like, it's not just about, I know that for you, a lot of that's about the physical, but we're constantly in training, whether it's growing our skill sets, whether it's growing our physical bodies, whether it's growing our relationships, whatever. And all of that's a training ground. And that kind of goes back to the mindset that we just talked about.
You underestimate yourself and you don't even start. But then once you start, you often surpass what you thought you could do.
Perform at your best, mate. That's sort of what life is all about. You know, I want to have the knowledge, I want to have the fitness, the health, the ambition and drive that no matter what comes along, when that next phone call comes, I can just say yes. I don't have to worry. Just go and do it.
Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome to today's episode of the Live, Train, Perform podcast. I'm your host, Shaun Kober. This is the third installment of a 90-minute conversation that I had with my friend Lizzie Wright of UFit Singapore. In the first episode, we went through how she ended up in Singapore and becoming a coach. The second episode was all about the tools that we've used to work through and condition ourselves to adversity. And in this episode, we give some examples of some of the tools that we've used with our clients to help them achieve their goals. Let's get this episode underway. Let's talk about some of the things that you just spoke about there. I want to touch on some of your clients that you work with, because I'm sure you've adopted this coaching style from, you know, the people that you've worked with over the last few years, and you've adapted, you've adopted, and you've kind of come up with your own coaching philosophy because of these people that you're coaching. Let's talk about that. Has there been similarities with what you've been through and, you know, the demographic, the type of people that come to you for coaching?
Yeah, so I think definitely in terms of my message, it's attracted a lot of women, whether in conversation, talking points to strangers like on Instagram, or my clientele that do come into the gym to see me, or for online coaching. Because not only a big part, obviously, for them to come in is for the training, but I like to look at it the whole 360 approach. But when I've had a massive influx like over the last year when I've really kind of fine-tuned my message. Like, I'm still working on it, and it's always going to be me adapting to the environment, adapting to the people and what's kind of going on in life. But it's what drives me every day. It's what drives me to coach. It's what drives me to write those posts, because the women I'm coaching, I think, or have coached in the past, or people who have come to me, haven't always been dealt the right card in terms of marketing and the diet culture and creating bad relationships with food, you know? So for me, I see it as my mission and my passion to be able to provide these women not only with the information, but change the way they think their minds, and know that they can have all of this and have a healthy mind and a healthy body if they follow XYZ. But that means they've got to break up with the diet industry. That means they've got to start looking at things differently. That means I've got to have hard conversations and challenge them and ask them, well, why do you think that? Why do you think this? What does this mean to you? How does it make you feel? You know? So I definitely think with coaching a lot of women, I deal with a lot of women who have anxiety or depression. They're anemic, or they hold on to a lot of traumas as they move through life. And whilst I'm not anywhere near a psychologist or anything like that, I'll put that out there right now, I still understand the human brain and how they're operating. So for me, it's just, what can I give that's going to make them feel confident, that's going to empower them, that's going to make them feel strong, and that's going to kind of dismiss all the bullshit that's out there and feed them with the right information. So they are the fuel to my fire. Like, I feel it's so strong in my heart that every single woman deserves to feel happy, confident, within their own body. And I think that starts with the internal dialogue before we start looking at they always come in for the external, and the aim is to get them much more than that as we move through.
I think that's incredible. And that's something I always say as well, is like any change first starts with the psychological and behavioral. You know, we need to start working on those things first before we can express that externally. Let's talk about that for a moment. Do you have time?
Yeah. Haven't had
cool.
dinner and it's 9 p.m. but I'll eat late. Don't worry.
Sorry, Lizzie. I'm just enjoying this conversation. There's still a few things that I want to touch on. So
I just got cramp in my leg.
Stretch it out.
Yeah.
What I want to talk about is what you just said then about breaking down barriers, because this has been a part of the fitness industry for so fucking long, and it's really difficult to try and break down these barriers with women. So, for example, you know, I don't know how some of these myths are still around on, like, women, you know, don't want to lift weights because they don't want to get big and bulky. You know,
I was just about to say that.
Yeah. How do you have those conversations with your clients? Or, you know, another big one as well is, you know, women in particular that I'm saying women because, you know, for the most part, most of my clients that come to me as women want to lose weight. And for the most part, most of the guys that come to me, you know, want to build muscle. And one of the biggest problems that I have is women have been fed this information of eat less, move more, calories in, calories out. And then they go on these fucking crazy diets for long periods of time. They see results for 3 months, 6 months or whatever. And then they plateau, and all they do is drop their calories again. And then they exercise more, and they drop their calories again. They exercise more. And, you know, they come to me, their metabolism's fucked up because they've been doing these crash diets for 2 years, you know, and then they go on holidays, their metabolism's slowed down, they you know, create metabolic adaptation, which is not necessarily a bad thing. That's what we fucking evolved to do, right? But then they go on holidays and they overindulge and their body just goes boom and blows out, and then they're starting again. Like, how do we talk to clients, or how do you talk to clients about going through, you know, a reverse dieting process of getting their metabolism to speed up, getting them to eat more food so that they can get to a healthy position, so that now when they go and train and stress their body actually adapts in a positive manner?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think number one, every person is different. Every person's had a different journey, a different upbringing, a different environment, and to a degree, they still come with the same information, but they obviously interpret information differently. So it's knowing your audience first as a coach for me. Some people are quick to respond. Anything I say, they do. Others take a lot more convincing. It's knowing and getting to know the client for me is super important on a personal level in terms of what they like, what they don't like, what triggers them, what doesn't trigger them. So it's trying to find out a little bit more about them first. I think the first part after that, once I started to know them and how they respond, like, so I'll just give them small tasks, right? So before I don't want to bombard them with information straight away. I think there's an important education process, and some people are willing to learn it straight away. Others will literally, you'll send them into a hole and they'll be like, no, I can't do this. Like, it's too much. So I always think go simple. I've just put it out there to a lot of my clients now. I just set up a female-focused Facebook group called Project Woman. And we're just doing something in January. I'm just running it for free. And I basically just outlined to them how to keep it simple. So focusing on small behaviors. So looking at my 4 key principles of health. And I think that's the important message first, is we're looking at your health. Yes, you want to get and lose weight and everything like that, but every diet you've ever done doesn't work. You tell me it does, but it's worked for 2 months, and then you're back to where you were. If not, you put on another 5 or 10 kg extra than before, because you've not learned anything about yourself. You just learned to either go into starvation mode, you know, or you just wreaked havoc like on your metabolism, or your body's in crash and stressed and guts all over, you know.
The diet has worked, but you haven't been taught how to come out of that in a healthy manner.
Exactly. And I think, like, for me, it's the education process on sleep, nutrition, training, and your mindset. So a lot of behavioral comes into it first. So what's your bedtime routine like? What's your morning routine like? And it's looking at all these smaller behaviorals that aren't sexy, like what we said earlier. They're not sexy, but they're things I do every single day because they get to me where I need to be. I get enough sleep because I'm so regiment with what I need to do. Same with nutrition. I'll always have I'll always be hydrated because I've always got a bottle near me, and I've done it forever, you know. So it's getting clients and women in that mindset that we need to strip it so far back that if you're not able to get I'd rather say like 2.5 to 4 liters of water a day, obviously depending on person, etc., etc. But if you can't get the basics right, how the hell do you expect to train hard? How the hell do you expect to do this long term? So it's kind of, for me, is trying to have that honest factor. And that's one of my values. Like, I uphold myself. I do tend to talk a lot and just say things. And I'm like, do I need a censor? And then I'm like, do you know what? I'm not going to kind of cushion it or whatever I need to. Yeah, or sugarcoat it. People need to hear it. And I'll be one of the better people that they hear it from because I believe in them and I've got a passion for what they need to achieve, and I can see what they can do. So I think it's
and they're paying you as well. They're paying you
and
as
they're paying
well.
me.
So you're like, hey, I've got to give this person, what they need. But that's a good point. Like, as coaches, we need to have a look at the person in front of us and adjust our ability to communicate what we need to communicate to that person to meet them where they're at. I had a conversation with one of my online clients today, and she started with me a couple of weeks ago. And we had a call booked in prior to Christmas. And she's like, hey, I don't want to do this call because I've got this and that going on, blah, blah, blah. I want to kick this off after New Year's. And I just simply wrote back and I was like, would you like to have this discussion so we can give you some strategies to get through the festive season so that, we can minimize the damage for the next couple of weeks so that we can start in a good position for the new year? Or would you prefer not to do that and we can have that first call in the new year? And, she was like, oh, let's definitely have this call, And then when I had that conversation with her today, she messaged me and she's like, all right, sweet, I'm back in the gym. I'm ready to roll. I've got all of that stuff out of my system and, let's go through the training program. And I was like, what's the biggest roadblock that you think you have over the next 2 weeks? The next month? And she goes, consistency. And I was like, all right, let's talk about consistency. Like, what is stopping you from being consistent? Oh, well, blah, 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 blah. And what it came down to was the all or nothing mindset. And I was like, all right, well, something is better than nothing. And that's literally what my podcast episode was about today. And when we got back, like right when we stripped everything right back, I was like, what's out of, nutrition, hydration, sleep, training, relationships, blah, 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 the wheel of life. I'm like, out of all of those things, what's one thing that you can do every single day for the next 2 weeks, the next month, that's going to shift the needle in the right direction? She's like, oh, well, I don't drink enough water. And I was like, how much water do you drink a day? And she's like, 1 glass. I'm like, 1 cup of water. I'm like, right, let's start there. And we, spoke about how, giving her some strategies. And I was like, all I want you to do is that 1 cup of water, that 250 mils of water, I want you to set an alarm from 10 o'clock until 6 o'clock. And every hour when that alarm goes off, I want you to drink 250 mils of water. And then I was like, I want you to go to your calendar. And every day that you do that, there's 2 liters of water. Every day you do that, put a tick on the calendar for that day. And if you don't do that, put a cross on that calendar. Let's gamify this. All I want you to do is accumulate as many ticks as you can over the next 2 weeks, over the next month, before our next call, and she was like, that sounds so simple. And I'm like, well, there's your challenge. Let's start there. And then I was like, what's the next issue? And she's like, oh, sleep. I go to sleep whenever. I always wake up at the same time. I have no problem getting to sleep, but staying to sleep is a problem. And then we broke it down. All right, what's going on here? Blah, 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 blah. And what the strategy that I gave for her was, journal. before you go to sleep. Write down what you're grateful for that day. Jot down all of the things in your head that is going to allow you to do a brain dump, because what most people do is, they lay in bed, 30 minutes, they're like, I need to call this person tomorrow, I need to pay these bills, I need to email this, blah, 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 blah. 30 minutes later, you're going through the same fucking things. It's like, write that stuff down, do a brain dump, and see how that goes. And I was like, go back to your calendar, have 2 columns. On one column is your water. On the other column is your journal. And your goal is to get as many ticks as you can in the next 2 weeks before our phone call.
I love that. I might steal that one. I like that game.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it, and she goes, what about training? And I was like, well, you've got your training program. All I want you to do for the next 2 weeks is get into the gym and play around with the exercise. You don't need to follow the sets, the reps. Do the exercises. Do every exercise that I've given you. Play around with the movements. Practice the movements as skill. Pay attention to how those movements feel. If there's any discomfort anywhere, if there's any imbalances, if there's any dysfunction, then, shoot me a message. Let me know what exercise don't feel good, and we'll talk a little bit more about the training on our next call and nutrition and things like that. But I literally had to strip it back to, let's drink 2 liters of water a day.
Yeah.
Let's do some journaling before we go to bed. Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, right, though? Like, everyone just then overcomplicates it, and then I guess gets disheartened when they can't achieve like basic things. And I feel like it's, I get it all the time. Like, all the time,
Yep.
like, we need to focus on your basics. And if you don't have your basics stacked or in order, then, like I said before, how are you going to get the other results you want? And I think the other part is you got to look at it as the overall health. Like, if this is creating other issues in your life, or, like, it gets me, because I'm just like, I want to help you guys. But there's always this realization, I think, if people can take away with it, is build your foundations. Like, build your foundations and build your consistency, and stop going, like, having that yo-yo. Because I have some
100%.
people who keep coming in who've had like PT, not with me, but PT throughout their lives, and I'm like, you're still in the same place. Like, when are you gonna like listen and learn? And when you don't have a PT for a while, or an online coach, or someone who's helped guide you, you just go back, you fall back to your old ways. It's like, when does that consistency continue up on that curve,
Yeah, that's a great point. And I mean, going back to this client, something that she said was, I said, like, what's the biggest roadblock that's going to stop you? And she's like, self-confidence. Because, and I was like, and I was like, all right, let me break that down. And I didn't ask her any more questions. And I said, let me guess, you've got an all or nothing mindset. So when you're trying to change something, when you're trying to lose weight, you focus on sleep, you count your calories, you get into the gym, you train, blah, 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 blah. You do all these things, and then 2 weeks later, something happens, you miss a day at the gym, and all of a sudden you think it's a failure. So then, you don't eat well, and you make poor choices with food, and you have a later night, and you fucking sit on the couch watching Netflix in your pajamas and eat Ben and Jerry's and all these types of things. I'm like, that's that all or nothing mindset. And it's like, that erodes confidence, so I'm like, don't do that. Let's look at, let's be realistic about this. If that you can get to the gym for 30 minutes, 3 times a week, and that you can do that consistently, that's where you start, and once you build that consistency for a month, 2 months or whatever, and again, you fucking tick those boxes off your calendar, and you can do that over that longer period of time, then you earn the right to add something else. And what that does is it creates wins, it creates achievement. And when you get those achievements, that boosts your self-confidence. So that's what we want to do. We want to set ourselves up for wins every single day. So when we have these wins, then, we look for the next win. We look for the next win. But it's not about going, I fucked up today and I didn't get to the gym. All right. That's not optimal. It's not ideal. But the next decision you make is going to be important. What we don't want to do is make a bad decision or make a less than ideal decision and then follow that up with another less than ideal decision. Because as soon as you start doing that, and as soon as you start justifying that to yourself, it's a snowball effect. And, that slope gets very slippery very fast.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, is the all or nothing. Like it's you go so far in that when you then have what they might think as a loss or a failure or something of that degree, that then the whole week is written off. Like I've had clients come to me before and just say, yeah, well, it didn't work on Monday, and this is all like, it's just, yeah, we end up just sitting on the sofa and, like you said, doing all this. I was like, well, something's clearly not working then. Like you've obviously overshot what you wanted to do. And again, like you said, when it's like the water, like you make it so simple that it's achievable. And a big one for me is the 9 to 10 out of 10 rule. So if it's not a 9 or a 10 action, so like if you can't drink 3 liters of water a day or 2 liters of water a day or whatever it is, and you tell me that it's a 9 or a 10, you can't complete that action, then it's not a 9 or a 10. It's like a 6 or maybe a 4. And that's when you then need to look at something simpler. So maybe, okay, I'm only having, like you said, like 250 ml. So I might as well I'm going to try a liter, for example, like make it so easy and then go, okay, 9 out of 10, I can definitely do that. So it's kind of looking in those points. And then I also think is everyone looks, again, I think there's that fear of failure, right? Linked to it and the negative side of things. But which I've had conversations recently with a client, and whilst it was avoided, they don't think it was fear. I was just like, it's fear. Like you're scared of failing, but so it's almost like I'm scared of failing, so why do I try? And I'm just like, but though if you don't try, you're going to stay exactly where you are.
Yeah, it's like, hang on a second. Can you walk right now? Because I'm pretty sure you fucking failed when you tried to stand up as a baby.
Yeah,
you didn't just fucking stop. Like you continue going, and you fix you make some adjustments, you create stability, and then you keep moving. Like we have this society where people, are conditioned to being afraid of failure. Yeah. Well, fuck, man. I tell you right now, like, if you never ever do anything because you're afraid of failing, you will never fucking achieve anything in your life. And I don't want to sound like an arsehole, but that is the fucking truth.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think it's that fear of, you're not going to move. But the way I see it and the way I reframe it is it's a lesson. It's teaching you something. If you didn't quite do something that you set out to do, that's telling you you're not ready. And you got to be okay with you not being ready, not because someone else is telling you or because someone else on their own journey has achieved something. Everything has got to be right for you, your environment, your job, your time, everything like that. Whereas I think, again, like I did a post about it, is that comparison is the thief of joy. So if you're constantly comparing your life and I should be here right now, like I get that a lot. I should be here. I should be doing this. I should be like looking like this, or I should be feeling like this. I'm like, but why? And it always stems because someone else is ahead or someone else is somewhere else in their journey. And I'm like, dude, you have to pay attention. Like, pay attention to yourself. Like, and that's where I think a lot of these ideals come from. People create all these ideals of timings, like, well, so and so got this in X weeks or whatever. I'm like, one, they're a little bit leaner than you. They've got a more athletic background. Two, you've got to learn all your habits and behaviors. Like, it's two different things. Like, one's already set to go.
You're in completely different. Yep.
Yeah.
Both in completely different positions. Just going back to the failure thing. I think it was a quote from Thomas Edison when they were asking about the light bulb, and he was like, I failed. I didn't fail. I found 10,000 ways it didn't work.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah.
I think there's so much power in that. And that's the thing, like, we can give this advice on this podcast and on your own podcast and, multiple podcasts and books and things like that. And, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I always say this, like, good coaches are basically going to say the same thing. We might say it a little bit different, and, we're going to take people from A to B. We might take different paths, but we're typically going to stick within certain parameters, So I think that's the point, is like, understand principles, and then put one foot in front of the other, and, you know, get people on your side that are going to guide you through that journey. And here's the thing, man, like for people listening, you know, I had this conversation with Adrian as well. And like, I started with, PT, like I ran my own strength and conditioning business, PT business, where I literally had to walk up to people on the fucking gym floor and, you know, ask what they were doing there, what they were training, if I could give them a free training session. Like, and I was doing at the start, like 30, 40 hours a week of free training, trying to sell myself, trying to sell my services to people, you know. And one of the things that came up constantly was, you know, every single person was different. So I had to figure out how to communicate to that person, and I had to figure out how to, you know, speak to them on their level and meet them where they were at. And, you know, I fucking love that. And that was so powerful for me. Once I transitioned into, you know, I'm coaching at Tiger now, and we've got a lot of group classes. There's, you know, might be 30, 40, 50 people, 60 people in a class during high season, things like that. You know, I don't get that one-on-one time with people. And I personally believe, you know, that one-on-one time with people where I'm catering to that individual and I'm giving them the fucking tools that they need for their life right now, that is so important for me. And, you know, if people are looking for a coach, there's so much value in that. But in saying that, if you're going to employ a coach, if you're going to trust them in the process, you know, you're going to employ them. You also need to follow their directions. You also need to trust them. I've had so many people that message me. I'm like, hey, man, you know, I know you're a good coach. I know you know your shit. My coach says this and that and blah, blah, blah. What do you think? And I'm like, follow what your fucking coach says. Don't worry about what I say. Don't worry about what other people say. Follow what that person says. And if you follow that process, you know, what's going to be the worst thing that happens in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, a year's time? Like, you're in the same fucking place. Like, it's not a big deal, right? Like, you know, trust the process. And, you know, a good coach is going to guide you down that path and give you those tools that you need at the appropriate time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you've said it in a nutshell. It's for sure. And I think I always say, do your research on the coaches too. And I think definitely now most coaches or good coaches will have an Instagram account or something showing their material and what they're about and their voice. And I think as long as it resonates with you and like where you want to go, I just think the key points are, like we've said, is the key principles of health. Like, are they focusing on long-term visions as well as helping you with your shorter visions? Like, they're helping you create a whole mind map of, have you looked at the next 12 months and beyond kind of aspect, as well as all the other smaller bits that come into the mix. But yeah, the right coaches will be putting out the right amount of content, and yeah, trust your coach and be consistent. Just freaking do it. Like,
yeah, there's something you just said then as well. Is like, you know, it's important to have these long-term goals, but you also need to break those long-term goals down into shorter-term goals. Like a year, I want to lose 10 kilos in the next year. You know, you need to break that down into, all right, cool. If I want to lose 10 kilos in a year, then I need to lose roughly 1 kilo per month. All right, now I'm going to break that down to a week. You know, 250 fucking grams per week. Is that achievable? Yeah. Absolutely. If I do the right thing. What do I need to do on a day-to-day basis that's going to shift the needle in the right direction? Am I doing these things? Yes. Cool. You're going to get those results. If you're not doing those things, well, you're not going to fucking get those results. But you need to have that conversation with yourself day to day. Is it valuable to me? Can I do it? Is it achievable? Yes. Sweet. You're on the right path. If not, then, you know, you need to match your expectations to your commitment levels.
Yeah. And a reminder of why you're doing it. I always delve in, like, why. That's what I always ask, like 5 whys. So I'll get them to write their goals out, and then the next page is 5 whys. Because I'm just like, why are you doing it? You know, like, and it gets down to the nitty gritty. It gets to raw conversations that I have with people in how they feel about themselves, how they have felt about themselves for so long, rather than it be that edge. Oh, do you know, like, I just want to lose a tiny bit of weight. I just want to lose this. I want to do like X, Y, Z. But really, you come down to the fact of every time they walk out in their clothes, they don't want to. They don't feel good in themselves. They feel X, Y, Z. And it's getting down to that. It's homing into your why. So every time you lead a session, you lead decisions that obviously you have to take responsibility for, you lead it with purpose and a bigger purpose than yourself, like to keep you turning up.
Purpose, right there. That is the theme of this podcast episode.
It is with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. That's awesome, Lizzie. We are coming up on 90 minutes, so my apologies for keeping you for so long. I apologize.
Yes, I'm the longest one ever. We had
I
much
really
more
appreciate.
to talk about.
Yeah, I know. We definitely got to do this again. So for those listening, I did speak to Lizzie off air and, said that I want to have these Coaches Corner episodes where, once a month I get on, a core group of coaches that I have these conversations with. They bring me, the questions that they're getting from their clients and, the things that are coming up for them, so we can have a conversation around that. And I'll also be doing the same thing with my clients. So I think that's going to be part of the podcast moving forward. But Lizzie, where can people find you if they want to get in contact or do some work with you or just follow you on social media?
So they can hit me up at Lizzie Wright. Also, if all the females who do tune in, you can join my private Facebook group. It's free. It's a place that I put content out there, which is called Project Woman. Or, like we spoke about before, my podcast, Project Women Podcast. Give us a follow, subscribe, and start listening. We're very early days, so bear with us as we start to build it all up. I'll be super excited to hear from anyone who has questions or anything they want to share on their journey too. Amazing.
Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I will have all of Lizzie's all of Lizzie's links in the show notes. Thank you very much, Lizzie. We shall chat again soon.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
And that rounds out my 90-minute conversation with my friend Lizzie Wright of UFit Singapore. If you got some benefit from these conversations, please make sure you pass it off to your friends and family. Any 5-star ratings and reviews are much appreciated. Much love, guys. Peace.